How's everybody doing today? You all look great. My colleagues, thank you so much for being here. All right, welcome to our session on building and leading student-centered computing programs. I'm really excited about the panelists that we have today. So whether you're joining us here in this session or watching a recording, thank you so much for making time to be with us today. We have a couple of session goals, and I'll walk you through those in 1 minute. But to get started, my name is Anona Shugart Walker, and I am a technical education outreach program manager for Google, based here in Atlanta, and have had the privilege of working really closely with the Georgia Department of Education and Constellation teams that put on today's event. So thank you for being here again, and it's great to meet you if I haven't had a chance to connect with you in another space. So our goals for this time are really threefold. One, we're going to be talking about centering the programs around the student experience. And so our hope is that you'll walk away with one idea of how to make your program even more student-centered. Two, we'll be talking about some of Google's computer science education programs. And so we hope that you learn a little bit about something that sparks your interest and that you take back to offer to your students. And then finally, we really are hoping to start a conversation. We hope that this will not be the first and the last time, that we will continue to have a conversation for those of you who are here today, or those of you, again, who are watching a recording. So we'd love to know who's here. If you could, in the chat, add your role, where you're based, and then one thing that you hope we will discuss today in the chat. Okay, we'll give you another couple seconds. All right, we'll keep, oh, there we go. Nice to meet you, Karen. And Karen, your name looks so familiar. I feel like we may have met before. Yes, I love that. So teaching students to code without doing it for them. So I'm sure our panelists today can speak to that. Anyone else? Okay, great. Well, we'll keep going. One thing I want to note is feel free to use the chat, but if you have a question, please make sure to scroll over to where you see the Q&A and drop your questions there. We will be answering questions throughout, but can always pause. We'll have some time at the end to go a little bit deeper on the questions. And then the last thing that we wanted to note is that this platform does enable you to turn on closed captions. So feel free to do that for the session. All right, with that, let's go ahead and introduce our panelist. So I am pleased to start with James. So James, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? And then we will move across the screen and you'll get a chance to meet my colleagues.
Yeah, awesome. Hello, everyone. My name is James. I am a Google Codenext intern and alumni of the program. I've been in the program from like the very start, like when I was in like 8th grade, and now I'm in, I'm going into junior year of college, so definitely been a long time. And yeah, I'm gonna pass it on to Melanie.
Greetings, beautiful people. My name is Melanie. I'm the community manager for the Codenext Oakland Lab. Unlike James, I just started this past November. So new, but learning and grateful to have such an amazing team. And yes, that is me. Oh, I'm from South Central Los Angeles, anyone. And great, so I'm going to pass it to the left, Ms. Lysandra.
Awesome. Thanks, Melanie and James. Hi, all. My name's Lysandra, and I lead our talent development programs. It's a portfolio of post-secondary programs that's focused on CS education pathways. I've been at Google for a very long time, since James started Codenext and probably before. And I'm originally from a very small town in rural north central Washington. Really excited to be here and have this conversation with you all today. I'm going to pass it over to Paulina.
Thanks, Lysandra. Hi, everyone. I'm Paulina. I'm a software engineer here at Google in Seattle. And I'm a CSSI, so Computer Science Summer Institute alumni. I did the program back in 2016, and since then I interned at Google with the Student Training and Engineering program, which is the STEP internship. And then I did another SWE internship after that, and then I finally converted to a full-time role. So I'm originally from Honolulu, Hawaii, and I'm so happy to be here.
Awesome. Thank you so much. All right, give me a second and I will transition us. There we go. All right, so we're going to get into the discussion now. I'll start with you, Lysandra, by giving you some time to tell us a little bit about the Computer Science Summer Institute, as well as Google's scholarship programs.
Yeah, awesome. I'm super excited to share a little bit about both of these programs. It's interesting. These programs share one thing in common. Both of them are some of our longest running student development focused programs at Google. So CSSI, which is short for the Computer Science Summer Institute, is now an online, thank you, COVID, 4-week introduction to computer science. And this is for what the term we use is rising first-year college students. So these students have just graduated from high school, and it's the summer in between graduating from high school and going to university. We look for students who really have a passion for technology, especially students that identify with groups that have historically been underrepresented in tech. And I think the passion piece is really important to note. These are not students who may have had access to APCS in their high school. They didn't have high school internships, for example. They may have been part of a robotics club. They may have had a leadership role there. But we're looking for that passion. We're not looking for students who are already excelling in the field. This program was started in 2008, quite a while ago. And like I said, it's Google's longest running development program. And it started with 17 students in Mountain View at our headquarters. And over the past 14 years, we have engaged and helped 4,500 students plus from across the US to develop their own STEM identities, to persist through that first year of university, which we know can be especially difficult, and really build community and a sense of belonging that follows them through their CS pathway. Next month, we will welcome another 650 students virtually, unfortunately, and we'll launch our first cohort outside of the US. So we are starting a pilot program in the UK as well for Afro-Caribbean students, which is super exciting. So that's CSSI. Scholarships, I'm trying to keep on time, Anona. Our goal of our scholarship program is really to make education more accessible by helping reduce the financial burden that students develop as they seek to pursue their CS degrees. These scholarships are anywhere from bachelor's to PhD. And we know student debt is particularly high for students of color. So we're focused on here, again, students that are historically excluded from the tech industry. And of course, that varies by region. Our scholarships are a global program. Our scholarship program started in 2004. So 4 years before CSSI, and it was started by Alan Eustace. If any of you are familiar with that name, he was one of the early Googlers, and he started it to honor his late friend and fellow computer scientist, Dr. Anita Borg. So in the next year, 2023, 2024, our Global Scholarship Program will celebrate its 20th year. And at this point in time, we have awarded financial support to over close to 3,500 students globally. So we're really proud of the impact of both of these programs. We've learned a lot from the longevity of these programs and hope to share a bit of those learnings with you today.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Melanie, can you tell us a little bit about Codenext?
Unmute. Very much so. So Codenext is a free computer science program for high school students. Specifically, we targeted Black, Brown, and Native students because, as we see in the tech space, that representation is very limited. So we want to make sure that we provide access to all students, but we don't discriminate. Everyone is welcome because it is important that we create the next generation of tech leaders. And so we are located in Oakland specifically, and we are the only Google operated office in Oakland. And it's right at Fruitville Station, which I find very impactful because proximity and where something is located is very important when providing access to people that you want to target. I think there's a lot of tech giants within the Bay Area, but they're close, but not so close. You know, they're over a bridge or it's an hour and a half away, but it's not in the community that's being impacted by these companies coming into the space. And so we have Google engineers who volunteer their time to provide these computer science courses to students that are related to, I'm gonna use some words here, you know, Python or data science. I'm learning, James, creating iOS or Android apps, or making robots out of Raspberry Pis, just really, you know, dope and creative things. It was started back, 2015, 2016, always trying to get the years. I know we're trying to think back. But the point is really to create James of this world. And I'm going to call him out. We had a graduation this past Saturday, and one helped out through. I mean, you were the reason it went through. But when we introduced ourselves, James said, you know, I'm the CEO of this company. I'm like, that's the energy. Absolutely. That is what we want our high school students to leave with and have that, I would say, the knowledge, the skills that they learn from Codenext to be able to go out into the world and be involved in computer science related fields. So it's a computer science. And then quickly, we also provide workshops and events that are related to computer science, but also academics, wellness. And we're really trying to grow that to create a holistic program for the students. Of course, we've been virtual for a while. We just got in person in April. So we're getting back in the swing of things and really excited to boost it back up in the fall to invite more students in. And we got a new space, so it's really cool, but I'll stop. But that is a bit of Codenext.
Fantastic. And CEO, James, you didn't tell me about this. Now I'm going to write James Dominguez, CEO.
You know.
All right. Well, you touched on it a bit, but is there anything else that you think is important for our audience to understand about the history or the context of any of the programs that you've just mentioned before we dive deeper into the conversation?
Yeah, I know there's one stat we talk about, but between, I think it said 2011, 2018, 3.5% of computer science graduates were Black, Latino, and Native. And so I think when thinking of the history of Codenext is, okay, how do we change that? How do we improve that? And so starting young, starting with students, again, who are in the 8th grade, going to 9th, that's really, we would love to get them as the young babies to cultivate their minds and really get them excited to be in computer science. And we've had students, you know, say, I don't see people who look like me in those fields. That's not who's being broadcasted. That's not what we see. So when our coaches look like them and talk like them and just encourage them to be in these fields, it then increases those numbers of computer science graduates. So I would just think that one piece is really like the context of why we do this work.
Yeah, 100%, Melanie. and where Melanie and Codenext sort of ends, CSSI begins. And so there's this great handoff and continuation of learning and community and belonging that we try and continue. One of the things that I would point out, given that CSSI and scholarships have been around for a while now, the evolution of the program is quite significant. The environment in which we work in many ways is still the same as it was in 2004, unfortunately, in 2008. But the APCS, for example, we now have CSP, and there are different engagement opportunities for students that were not there when these programs were started. And so we've really taken a view of, I think some of the big evolutions are, one, understanding what the landscape is and how that's changing there. And two, going from a Google knows everything and Google's going to teach you how to do this, to you students bring your experience and all that is into the program, and we're going to co-create together. And your experiences are equally as important and valid as the experiences of engineers who have been here for 15 years. And we're going to learn from you. We're going to understand where you are. We're going to work together to really help facilitate this experience over the next 4 weeks. And so it's really about centering the students for us. I mean, that's the whole point of this conversation. But that has been a big evolution of the program. It certainly didn't start that way. And that's been a learning from our students and from the way that we really operate the program.
Very, very helpful. Thank you so much. All right, one last background question before we dive into the meat of today's discussion. Can you all talk a little bit more about the target audience or the student profile that you are looking for? You've touched on this a bit, but I want to make sure that this is crystal clear going into the rest of our conversation.
Yeah, I think we target the same student profile, although different ages likely. So we are engaging with Black, Brown, Native students as well. And for our scholarships, we really expand that to include veterans, students with disabilities. We are also looking at socioeconomic factors when it comes to scholarships and even CSSI, for example. And that obviously changes and shifts based on where we are running a program or hosting a scholarship, because different regions have different requirements and all of those things that I won't get into. The other piece in there, and this is more the global lens, is looking at women as well. So women in tech, particularly in Europe, Middle East, and Asia, is quite low. And so in those regions, we've been focused on women. Anything you want to add, Melanie?
I was going to say, exactly. We have Black, Latino, Native, Asian. We got a young white male in there. I like to count them all, but because they're in proximity to Oakland. So that's a big thing too. Just location as well. But also we really, in women, that's one thing we do want to increase with, just a heads up. That's something we want to work on. But no, very similar.
Thank you both. All right, turning to Paulina and James, a question for you. You both went through these programs, and I'm wondering, what was the most impactful aspect or component of the program? Can you talk a little bit about that? And it can be very specific to the program or things that you've seen over time as you've entered your career.
Yeah, I go first. I think one of the most impactful things about Codenext is that I got to meet someone that who works in the field, because I feel like otherwise, besides like Codenext, I don't think I would have known anyone that like is a computer scientist. So having access to someone like that is like huge, and it's like really helped me along the way, like throughout my career.
Yeah, for me, I think the most impactful thing probably was getting to meet other students in the program who had similar backgrounds. So they were also women, people of color, from Title I high schools like me. But they were also so unique from like all different parts of the country. And I just learned so much from all of them and got to see their attitude towards coding. And it was really inspiring. Yeah.
Paulina, you said you got to learn about their attitude toward coding, and I'm curious, can you say a little bit more about that?
Sure. I mean, so in my high school, I didn't, like we were saying, I didn't have APCS. I had a robotics program, but I was kind of relegated away from the programming part of that because I was the only girl. But just seeing other like women, especially who were passionate about CS and like they saw a space in the technology field for them where they weren't relegated to marketing or outreach or things like that. Like they were actually coding and building apps and things like that. So that was a huge paradigm shift for me. I got to like imagine myself in that field as well.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that. All right, Lysandra and Melanie. Again, the conversation today is really centered around how do you build a program that is student-centered? And so one way to do that is to get feedback. So I'd love to hear how you request feedback from the individuals who are participating in your programs, and then also how you use that to shape your programs.
I don't know if
you go first, Melanie.
Oh, okay. I was like, I don't know what got you. I will. Yeah, so there's a few ways, and then James helped me in case there was a way you were asked feedback that I don't know about. So that would be cool. But I know after every session, we send students an exit ticket. So it has a few questions. One is like after your day, were you in the comfort zone of learning, or like comfort zone of understanding, the learning zone, or the panic zone? Then what information might you need to go over again? What was a way that you may want to learn something different? And so having the coaches debrief after, review that information, and then find ways, again, if they need to pivot or change up the way the curriculum is taught. And we also do that after workshops. So again, was this information helpful? Yeah. Why? Nah. What would you like to see differently? And so that's always helpful. One thing this is not specifically curriculum, but we've had design sprints where students have helped for just, we want to revamp what is the word? I guess the design of Codenext or the logo and things. So having students be a part of what that now looks like, or even what the new space that we're building in new areas look like. So I think that's very helpful. And another thing I would say is just being with them Tuesday through Saturday, being with students every single day and having conversations. And really that's a huge part of Codenext, right? Is building community, because they can like what they're learning, but I think it's way better if they like the people there that they're learning from and being in space with. So just asking questions and getting feedback is what I think helped to create different clubs, allow for us to maybe, this club next semester may need to be more beginner, so more students feel comfortable to take it. Or we may need more women to teach because one student said that she felt uncomfortable that she was the only woman in the club, just like Paulina. And so even when we look at mentors, that helps us with planning, just hearing that type of feedback. So I would say I said a lot, but those are ways that we receive feedback.
I have a follow-up question. You mentioned something about the panic zone. Can you talk to me about how you introduced that concept and the degree to which students you feel like kind of are honest in sharing where they're feeling and how the content is landing with them?
That's very true. I was going to say I think there's ways to find other ways of feedback because not everyone can be honest in the space. And that's why I think sometimes conversation helps. Like, oh, I'm learning. But then the question of what may we need to go over again, maybe everything that they said. So it may not match all the time. But one thing I know we're constantly, trying to talk this narrative of being okay to fail. And yes, it's okay if you don't know. That's like the whole purpose. So then you do know. And I think the work that, again, I'm not in the spaces everyday learning. And so James, you may be able to speak on, but just the way that they create these intricate robot things or 3D prints, like there's always something messing up possibly. And so, okay, now you just learn to do that. And so I believe when they see staff work on projects with them and also fail in ways, it encourages them. It's like, it's okay that, oh, this may be too much. And they'll come every day. And especially we have this, again, a showcase. And so students were coming every day to work on this project and knowing that, and even in their speeches is, I had to do this like 300 times, or I had to try this a lot of times in order to get this to work. I'm like, that's a great narrative, like teach that it takes time. So yeah, I would say that's why the panic zone is awesome.
Thank you so much. Lysandra.
Yeah, I just want to tag on to what Melanie was saying really quick, and then I'll talk about some of the feedback. I think one of the things that is really important in these experiences, and Melanie was just talking about this, is I'm going to use the term bringing Google engineers down a notch and making them real people. And a lot of times, students come into these environments and they're introduced to the Google engineers, and there's this myth around Google and who gets to work here and all of that, and being in space with those Google volunteers. And a lot of times, and Paulina, you can probably speak to this as well with your cohort, a student will have a question and the volunteer won't necessarily know the answer to it. But the key is they know how to find the answer, and they teach the students, okay, how do you problem solve this on your own? And how do you build your skill set? You don't have to know all the answers. There's lots of resources out there. And just creating this understanding that it's not about knowing all the answers. It's about finding the answers, working together in groups or teams or pods to find those answers. That's really where a lot of the learning takes place. So Melanie, I just wanted to highlight that piece that you said, because I think that's a really important piece of the environments that we create. In terms of feedback, we have two big forms of feedback, and I'll talk about CSSI first. So there's exit surveys that all the students get when they complete their 4 weeks. We also give exit surveys to all of our volunteers. So we're seeking feedback from all directions. We also have daily surveys that students fill out, similar to what Melanie was explaining with Codenext. And we've actually done a lot with the daily surveys over the past few years. And one of the things that we're able to do is see what Melanie was talking about, those students that may be feeling challenged in one area or another. And we're able to, on a daily basis, sort of pivot, like, okay, this person is being challenged in, say, Java, and this person, this other student, feels like they have Java. So let's pair them together, and there can be some peer learning that takes place within these groups. It doesn't always have to be the Google volunteer to the student helping. Like, we want to create that community and that safety and that sort of camaraderie within the program itself. And so we use these surveys to help put students in a position to help others succeed and help themselves succeed. And we're able to really flex how we teach based on, one, the micro of the student, but also sort of that next step out, which is looking at the entire cohort of 30 students and how did they take on that last module that we taught? Were they more in this stretch or panic mode, or did they feel like, oh, they're too comfortable, they got it, it wasn't hard enough? And then we're able to really pivot based on that daily feedback, which is really important for us. And then with scholarships, because it is a financial support system, we have retreats for our scholars and we bring them in and we're able to introduce them to Googlers, and we have a networking opportunities as well. And at the end of that retreat, there's also feedback, but it's a very different program. It doesn't have the curriculum and sort of the weight behind it that CSSI does in terms of feedback and content. Paulina, is there anything you would want to add about feedback during CSSI?
Let's see. I remember we had to take daily surveys, I think, right before we left for the day. So that was really fun because I could like give a shout out to my favorite instructors or like talk about, I don't know, a specific TA who helped me a lot. So yeah, that was helpful.
And James, any thoughts that you'd like to add here? I know Melanie said you might have some thoughts.
Yeah, I remember taking like a lot of surveys. I don't always like love the surveys because, you know, it's like something else you have to do at the end. But I think they definitely help like the instructors like know where we're at. And I think I was pretty honest in those surveys, like how I was doing like on a scale of like 1 to 10 or however that day went.
Fantastic. Well, thank you all for sharing on that topic. I'm going to pause here. If you have any questions, feel free again to drop those into that Q&A section of Hopin, or if it's easier, feel free to drop it in the chat. So I'll pause here for a second to give you all a chance to ask any questions at this point. And again, there will be another period at the end where there'll be time to ask questions. Okay, we'll keep going. I have plenty of questions. All right, back to you, James. Can you talk about the ways in which Codenext met you where you were in terms of what interested you, what skills you brought to the table, what knowledge you already have? How did the program meet you where you were?
Well, it met me like right where I was because like Codenext was like right next to my middle school.
Physically as well. Yeah, I didn't add that, but hey, there you go.
Yeah. So let's see. Codenext was like people were like, I guess we all kind of started like the same place, like learning wise, and like what would you say what they bring to the table? Or
how did they meet you where you are? So, you know, when you think about what you were interested in, or maybe the skills that you brought to the table, how did they make sure that the program met your needs and that you were able to engage and participate in a meaningful way? Or did they give you things that got you excited?
Oh yeah. They had like a lot of, it was like really when beginning of Codenext, it was like brought up like a lot of things like engineering and like computer science and like even like leadership too. So it was like I was like interested. They got like exposed me to like a lot of things, and I could like choose to like I really want to do like robotics or something like that. I could like take a club in that, and we like they provide a lot of resources in like any area that you wanted. So that's like one of the ways.
Fantastic. All right. keep going. Lysandra and Melanie, and we'll start with Melanie this time since you all are going back and forth. Melanie, can you talk about one challenge that you have in surfacing and responding to student feedback?
Yeah, I was thinking of that question. I'm thinking of a more recent time. I felt when joining Codenext during, like, I'll never say the end of the pandemic, but transitioning from going back in person type of situation, I feel like we lost contact with some students because, I know there's burnout with constantly being on the computers, the emails. And so I know me personally, I feel like there was a batch of students like feedback we didn't really receive. And so that's one challenge I think about. But another, and it kind of related back to the first question, is just like learning styles, people may want to provide feedback in different ways. And so we do have this survey, but there may be one student who doesn't fill it out. Let's keep it real. They're like, all right, I'm gonna do it. You get in a car, you get on BART, it skips you, right? And so trying to follow up with that student, or just, I think there's a feedback that, okay, so when we have students who are involved in clubs, but there's also students who say, that I don't have the capacity to come once a week, but I can do a community event and a workshop, so you're still a member. And I still think there's something a feedback I would like to get from that group that we don't get as often compared to people who are in the clubs every week. Again, we only see them a couple of times throughout the semester. And so we do ask, like, if there's any type of club you would want, what would it be? They're like, I got basketball, I can't really focus on that. Or, I'm in 10 AP classes. That's a lot for me. So one way of growing feedback is just trying to think of what are some more creative ways that we can engage folks where they're at. But so there are a few things. Again, I think there's a group of students who are kind of missing feedback from, and secondly, students who may not feel comfortable sharing in that space, and trying to think of other creative ways to hear back from them. Yeah.
I love that. And we welcome comments in the chat from you all. If you have thoughts or ideas, we definitely, again, want this to be a conversation. Lysandra.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I think one of the things that is difficult, and I'll speak to CSSI for this particular question. Codenext actually has done this really well. They have different operating models that can meet students at different points. If you can commit to a long-term, great. If you can only do a weekend workshop, great. If you need something else, great. They've got these different operational models. CSSI is a very intense 4-week program. And we understand that for a lot of students to commit to this program means that they are saying no to something else. And sometimes that is no, they can't take that job that's going to help them pay for college in the future. We do offer stipends to all of our students, but even then, there's an opportunity cost that we have to acknowledge for students who elect to go into this program. And it's difficult to see those students who are like, oh, I want to be in this program, but I can't commit to the 4 weeks. And when we were in person, it was an in-person 3 weeks. Paulina, keep me honest, 3 weeks, right? It's 4 weeks. We've done some adjustments in a virtual world. 3 weeks in person, fully dedicated. For many students, that meant that they were staying in dorms together. We had different weekend retreats that they would go to local games. They would have outings together. So really creating this sense of community. And that has a huge benefit to the students who go through the program. They are creating this very tight network of peers that, for many of them, they stay in contact with these folks years after. Some of them, we've heard that even after they've graduated from college, they're now roommates together, you know, in working in the tech industry. So, you know, one of the things that we want to work on is how do we create these different operational models so we can meet more students where they are and give them the experience and opportunity to create their own STEM identity and create a pathway into the tech industry. I think the other thing that sort of begs for this differentiated operational model is it's really hard to scale up a program that is so people dependent. This program would not run without our Google volunteers. For about 650 students, it takes anywhere from 300 to 400 volunteers. And so as you continue to scale up, those volunteer numbers also continue to grow. And so there's a question around how do you continue to produce high-touch programming at scale, and is that even possible? There's a big sort of conflict there that we're trying to work through and figure out, you know, what are some of the ways in which we can do that. And we want to continue to reach more students, certainly, but we don't want to sacrifice the experience. And so we need to figure out that balancing point.
Thank you for sharing so transparently here with our audience. We have a couple of questions actually that came through, and I think it makes sense to answer them now. Lysandra, from an anonymous participant, question: will CSSI stay virtual in the future? You just talked a little bit about the in-person experience, so would love your thoughts there.
Good question. It's the $1 million question that we're all asking ourselves right now. I think there will be different forms of CSSI in the future. So there could be an entirely virtual option for students who maybe don't have the opportunity to go to a specific location. We're also looking at potentially hybrid models where we come together at the beginning. We create experiences where students get to know one another. It's more about finding those, creating that community and sense of belonging together at the beginning. And then you go off maybe for a couple weeks for the programming, then come back together at the end. We may go back to some locations being completely in person as well. You're getting it straight, straight from the presses. We don't know. That's the best answer. But we're toying with a lot of different ways that we may be able to do this in the future. We do understand that the in-person component is extremely valuable for the students. And I think Codenext has seen that too, and it's why they've pushed so hard to open their labs as well. That sense of community that you get in person is really hard to replicate virtually.
Thank you so much. And thank you, Dan, for your thoughts on the scaling challenges. That's really helpful to hear how you all have thought about that work. All right, Paulina, the next question is for you. Can you talk about the ways in which CSSI and any other programs that you participated in, they helped you to create the path to your current career as a software engineer at Google?
Sure. And I think this ties into I was looking at one of the other anonymous questions, like, is there a bridge from CSSI to internships? And yeah, so the straightforward answer is definitely making those connections to existing Googlers, to professors and teaching assistants who can help me. Like in one case, I got a referral from one of my lead instructors at CSSI to get into the STEP internship program. And so, yeah, just having those connections and keeping in contact with them, I think it also really helps. So yeah, I mean, that's one of the reasons I'm here at Google today, is because I knew I had people who I could reach out to for help and advice about like applying. And then another more less straightforward answer would be just how my mindset changed doing the programs. So like Lysandra and Melanie were saying, taking Googlers down a notch, or seeing that they were real people, it helped ease some of the imposter syndrome symptoms that I was feeling. Like, is it really possible for me to work at this company it provides so much, like all the free food and the all the perks and the benefits? Like, the people who work here, originally before I did the programs, I thought the people who work here must be like absolute wizards. But then I got to meet like all these TAs and instructors who actually worked here, and they taught me a lot about like how it's okay to fail, like Melanie was saying. Like, I learned resiliency and how to approach a problem even if I might not know the exact answer. And so in that way, my mind was really open to the idea of actually building a career at Google. Yeah.
Very, very helpful. Paulina, one thing you said that I'd love to learn a little bit more about is you talked about you knew you had the connections and the resources to help you navigate and get to the place you wanted to be. And I wondered if you recall how the program helped to develop some of those skills, because for some that doesn't come naturally. So was there, either through CSSI or something else that you participated in, that really helped you to develop the networking skills that are critical to successfully making it to a career at Google?
Yeah. I think CSSI, everyone was just so friendly. And I remember, like, especially when you're a pretty young student and you're just starting out with coding, everyone is very, very enthusiastic to see you grow. And so one of my closest like mentors that I got from CSSI was actually my RA at the program, and he talked us through, let's see, like he would help us with our assignments and our projects and things like that. And we would be sitting in the dorm at, I don't know, 9 p.m. at night, and he'd be like talking about the different things that he would have to do. And so just kind of reciprocating the energy that people brought to the program. It was easier to build connections when everyone was so enthusiastic to begin with. And yeah, I think that's something I very, very much valued about these programs.
Sorry about that all. My internet just went out. I'm back though. You can hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, great. All right. Our last question for James and Paulina, and then again, we'll go to the audience questions. What advice would you offer to those who are listening now or who will be listening to a recording of this session to really build student-centered programs in tech? And we can start with you, James. There we go.
Yeah. Advice I would give is, let's see. I would say something that's really big is like being like really accessible, and like for Codenext, I was always able to like go in anytime that I wanted. Oh, not anytime, but like I know the times they're open throughout the week, and I was always able to like go in whenever they were there and like ask for help on like not just computer science, but like almost everything from like building my resume to my homework at school. So I think being accessible was like really big.
Fantastic. Thank you. And Paulina?
Yeah. I would say, so for CSSI, and a lot of these programs, a lot of the students are just figuring out whether they want to be in the industry. So my advice would be to really fan those flames of their interest in tech, whether that's by, I don't know, having a really fun project that they can work on, or just showing that it's achievable to develop these skills in the industry. Yeah, and I think it is one of the ways that I was able to pursue this path, because if I hadn't been continually interested, I would have just chosen to do something else. So, yeah.
I love that. I just wrote down fan those flames. And I love that. That's something that will stick with me. Thank you so much. Well, those are all my questions, but we have another question in the Q&A, and this one will go to you, Lysandra. We, again, touched on this a bit, but once a student completes CSSI, is there a bridge toward an internship with Google?
That's a good question. There isn't a guarantee of anything, but, oh, you back, Melanie?
Yeah,
but we do a lot. What's the best way to talk about this? So within CSSI, there is the skill development portion of the programming. There is also, I don't like this term, but I'm going to use it, soft skills. So working through resumes, working through I Am Remarkable workshops, going through imposter syndrome. There's a lot of different portions that make up the full program. Part of that is also resume building and interview prep. And so those are intentional pieces of the program that help ready students for interviews at Google or other places within the industry. We know that through our alumni surveys that we've done, about 70% of our students go from CSSI into graduating with a CS degree and working in industry. So the data suggests that this works. And I think it works because of the scaffolding put around the technical curriculum. It's not all about the technical curriculum. It is really about helping in multiple facets and being successful within the tech industry. And so to directly answer your question, there's not a direct bridge. It's much more indirect. And we've seen students like Paulina. We see a lot of students like Paulina who go through the program and then come into our early stage internship program, which is the STEP internship that Paulina mentioned earlier.
Anyone else want to add to that or build on that?
Yeah, I can, just following up on that. Like, I went through those soft skill workshops and everything, and I can speak to how helpful they were. I actually, even for different companies as well, I actually did the Microsoft Explorer internship first before I did the STEP at Google. And yeah, so just having those resume buildings is very, very helpful. And now on the other side, as a community moderator, I'm leading those panels now for this year's CSSI. Yeah, so yeah, and I'm just very excited to share the knowledge.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. If there are any final questions, we have only a couple minutes left, but if you have any other questions that you'd like to drop into the Q&A, please do that now. And while you are typing those into the chat, I want to turn it back over to Lysandra and Melanie, just again to tell us a little bit about how folks can stay connected, learn more about these programs after today's session.
I saw that the website, is in the chat, so you can go there, and there's a newsletter, and you can put in your information, and then we have newsletters every month that comes out to update on just ways that you can get involved, especially as we prepare to open up new spaces. Just how you can volunteer or just learn, or like I just said 3 times, get involved. But that's one way. I can drop my email if that's a thing, and I'll say those ways.
Yeah, I would say that the links Anona dropped, thanks Anona for dropping those in, are the best ways to learn about the programs and when applications open. Based on timing right now, applications are closed for both scholarships and CSSI. We're going into the program season, which is typically summer for us, given student schedules and all of that. And applications will open in Q1 of 2023 for our 2023 programming. And there are ways to stay connected. We, and I think Melanie and Codenext do this too, follow our social channels. And a lot of times when applications open up or opportunities open up, we'll be able to push those out via our social channels as well. And you can always contact me, LinkedIn, however you want to chat. I'm happy to talk.
Wonderful. Thank you both for sharing that.
Oh, yes. And really quick, I should have said, if you know students in Oakland or the Chelsea, Harlem area of New York, our applications open in July. But again, you can go on the website and we will send that information. But thank you, Lysandra, for reminding me that that's a thing. I'm done.
Fantastic. Well, Melanie, we had one more question come in. And it asks, what is the grade band for Codenext? Is it 6th through 12th, or does it extend to college students?
It's currently for rising 9th through 12th graders at the moment. So unfortunately. And then we pass them on to CSSI and other programs.
Thank you. All right. Well, thank you all for joining us for today's session. I want to thank the panelists here for taking time, and all of you, I believe, have gotten up so early because you're on the West Coast to be here. So thank you so much for being here and being so awake and alive. It was great to chat with you. And for those who are here based in Georgia, again, my name is Anona. I'll put my email address into the chat. I am here to support technical education in any way possible. So if you have questions about anything you heard today or Google's approach to technical education outreach, I would love to have a conversation with you. Again, thank you for taking time to be with us. We really appreciate it, and we hope you enjoy the rest of the event. Thank you.